Every single one of us has a soul, but how do we find the path to our discovery of who we are, what we're here for, who we're here to serve? Stick around because I'm going to be interviewing one of the authors from our upcoming book. The upcoming book is Anatomy of Abundance. The person I'm interviewing is Dr. Michelle Wolford. Stick around. You might have heard my dog barking in the background, and that really made me think about something because we're talking about the soul's path to discovery here. And it made me think that there's a saying that dogs don't have a soul. I truly believe they do. So I was talking to Dr. Michelle about my dog before we got started here, and I'm excited to bring her up to the stage now. And we're going to be talking about your soul's path to discovery. What does that mean? What is it all about? And Dr. Michelle, it's so good to see you. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm wonderful. Thank you so much. It's so great to see you too.
I love what you do because as a naturopathic doctor, this is something that, I've been into health food for many, many years, for decades, and, trying to find those natural ways to heal. I remember when I first got diagnosed with hypothyroid, this was probably maybe a little over 15 years ago. And the doctor immediately wanted to prescribe me with a medication. And so my first question was, will it kill me if I don't take that medication? Will I die in 6 months? And she said, no, no, no. And I said, then I'm not taking it because I wanted to find a natural way to work through that, what was going on. And then it was probably about 7, maybe 8 years later that I tried natural ways and they just didn't seem to work. And so I literally cried, bawled my eyes out when I had to go to a pill.
Yeah.
That's how much I believe in the natural way of living, the natural health. And so how did you get into naturopathic medicine and what's your specialty? Like, cause there's wide range, a wide range in the naturopathic world. So please share with us how you got into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to share my story, but I kind of actually want to speak into yours first a lot of people, they have a medical diagnosis. The doctor immediately wants to put them on medication and say, take it for the rest of your life, see you later. And I hear that sentiment a lot. People come to me and they're like, I don't want to take this. Do I have to? And the truth of the matter is, no, there's usually a lot of options that we can explore before one does have to take medication. And of course, medication has its time and its place. But ideally, we're exploring a bunch of different options prior to that, whether it's diet or energy medicine or plant medicine or lifestyle changes. And, when somebody says, it didn't work, then I'm usually like, okay, well, then we really didn't connect in with whatever that root cause was for you. And I don't know anything about your case, but just kind of listening to that little blurb about your story is sometimes we catch things too late and we really do have to move to the pharmaceutical route, or sometimes things are too far out of balance that we need the pharmaceutical to give us an immediate shift very dramatically. But ideally speaking, and again, I treat anything from coughs to cancer. I treat kids, I treat adults. We're doing wellness visits, professional athletes, digestion, hormones. I mean, I am a primary care physician that does integrative medicine. So we're looking at how can we integrate your life into the changes we want to make. How do we help your body function more optimally in the world that you are a part of? And if something's not working, there's a reason why, because the body wants to be in a state of harmony. It wants to be in balance and it wants to be healthy and whole. So when it's not, it's the language of the body saying, hey, something's not working for me. And of course, you could have the best intentions ever, but if something's not working by the choices we're making or something we've been exposed to, or genetically speaking, something could be out of alignment, we really want to be able to turn certain genes on or off. I mean, there's a whole multitude of things in that kind of physical, genetic, biochemical range. But then, of course, it's like, well, what's happening mentally, emotionally, spiritually? Because all of that plays a role. So the thyroid gland, for example, is speaking your truth, feeling heard, feeling seen. And so oftentimes when that comes up for women, I'm like, okay, are you feeling seen in your life? Do you feel heard? Do you feel appreciated and accepted for the, gift that you are? So
That's, yeah, that is definitely
Mhm.
where I was for so many years of my life, that I did feel unseen and unheard. And actually, when I moved into entrepreneurship, like one of the programs I started probably a good 70 or 80 programs in the last 9 years. But one of those programs I started was called Be Seen, Be Heard. It was all
Oh, I love
about,
that.
yeah, because like I felt unseen, unheard for decades in my life.
Yeah.
And part of that was that process, and that hypothyroid was something that was diagnosed. So let me ask a question related to that, because I did talk about that. You shared a little bit about that. And so what is the point of no return? Like, I've been taking now medication for probably 7 years, 7 or 8 years,
Okay.
something like that. Is there a point of no return, that medication will not help it? I mean, that switching from the medication to a natural path, is there a point of no return? And what is that point of no return, if there is?
For sure. Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, generally speaking, I would say unless you've had your thyroid gland removed and you have to be on medication, then there usually always is a point of no return. Every now and again, I may meet a patient where I'm like, oof, this, and that. Like a lot of things are out of balance. It may be a long journey before we get there. But I mean, I have a patient that I've been working with for 5 years. She was on thyroid medication for 30 years before seeing me, and she's no longer on thyroid medication. So she is on a natural substitute. Sometimes it is about substituting a natural for the pharmaceutical. Sometimes you can have no medication, period. Of course, the longer you're on something, then it can be harder to unwind that. And of course, the older we get, just because the body is not as like young and fresh, the harder it can be. But
It
I would,
isn't. Meh.
yeah, no, right.
That's the bad news of the day. No, just kidding. Go ahead. Go
But
ahead.
I
Go
would
ahead.
say, I mean, our cells are meant to live for 120 years. So if we take care
Really?
of, yes, oh yes. So if we take care of us and we take care of us well, and we're draining and detoxing the body, and we're giving it healing nutrients, and we're living as balanced of a life as possible, and we're doing these constant check-ins, yeah, you could be. I mean, especially only being on it for 7 years, I would be surprised if we couldn't get you off of the thyroid medication. Again, I don't know the depth of your case, but usually I would say 90% of people have not met that point of no return. If you do not have a thyroid gland, you 100% have met that point of no return. People remove it for a multitude of reasons. Um, but if you have a gland, we ideally can get it functioning again.
Okay, well, listen up, folks, because we got to stop this interview right now. I'm hopping in my car and I'm driving up to Encinitas, California, because that's where Michelle is, and I'm down in the southern part of California.
Yeah.
You said 120 years, and what popped in my head is, I remember I was 13 years old, and I said, I'm going to live to be 113 years old, because I
Okay.
want to be here for the tricentennial, because that was the bicentennial, and it
Oh,
was like such a crazy time. And I was like, I'm going to live to be 113. And so I can actually do it. So,
you can. A lot of the Okinawans, they live till about 110 to 120 years old.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm ready. I'm ready. Okay, Michelle, after we're done here, we're going to set up an appointment for me to come see you.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll
Okay.
get that,
Sounds good.
get that, get that out of the way there. I'm super excited about that, because, oh my God, I'm in tears right now. Like, I can feel them welling up right now, because
Yeah,
that was one of it might seem ridiculous to somebody, but to me, that was one of the hardest decisions I ever made in my life,
of
was
course.
to go
Yeah,
on medication. Because when you go on medication, especially a medication like that, you are on it for life. I mean, that's the
yep,
way it is, right? That's the way it's explained. And so I never wanted to be on any medications for life, or on any medication at all. And
for sure.
so I am super excited about this. I don't know how we turned into that, but there we
No,
are.
it's okay. Well, it's cool too because, a lot of other doctors, they are only looking at the thyroid. They look at the number, they say it's out of range, they give you medication, they say, bye bye, we retest you in 6 months. Are you
Right.
good? Okay, bye bye. But you have to look at the endocrine system as a whole. And I think this is really what helps or makes naturopathic doctors very special is we're trained. We have the same medical training as your MDs, but integrated into that is alternative ways of healing the body. So we're always looking at it as like a whole big picture. So I'm like, okay, well, what's going on with your sex hormones? What are your stress glands doing? What's your digestive tract doing right now? Because all of those, what's happening with your micronutrients? All of those play a huge role in how the thyroid gland is going to function. And so it's really about looking at the whole picture.
So when you work with a patient, do you give them like a whole plan? Like, this is what, this is ideally you would do all these different things, and then boom, you're healed, like that,
Yeah.
or like what's the
Sometimes.
process?
Yeah, right. So I
Like,
usually spend my new
nailed it,
patient visit.
Linda, nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah, you can take over. New patient visit is usually 60 minutes in length. So I do a lot of in-depth talking about kind of what's been going on in your body and what has happened. Are there any familial links? Like I'm really trying to understand physically how things are expressing. Biochemically, we'll look at labs to see what's happening there. Genetically, like if there's something that we know through that familial patterning, or if we feel like we need to run a genetics test, that could be helpful. And then, yes, the mental, emotional, spiritual side of things. So it's 60 minutes of talking. And if people come into the clinic, then we'll do a physical exam. We can run labs. And then I do prescribe diets, plant based medicine, homeopathy, which is more known as energy based medicine, and sometimes some other things to help the body move back into alignment with its true self. It's about the body finding that coherence. So something knocked you out of balance, and you may know what it is, and that may be over from a mental, emotional, we'll call it trauma perspective, but that doesn't mean that the cells were actually put back into their vibratory path. So they got lost somewhere along the way and they just need a little bit of help.
Well, let's help them, okay?
Yes, we can.
Let's help them. Let's help them. I'm curious because we just finished interviewing one of our authors in another of our books called Unstoppable. And she was talking about she has a process called the mind body process. And it's
Hmm.
all about, connecting with our childhood traumas in order to move through those. And so I'm curious with your work that you do, because, the naturopathic is the body. And so how
Mhm.
much of the mind plays a part in all the other work that you do?
For sure. I mean, I wish I could give you a percentage, but I mean, the mind, like how we think, plays a huge role in how the body's going to respond. Because imagine if how we think is basically the commander of the ship. And if we're saying, God, I'm so stupid, the cells are like, did something wrong, did something wrong. So the cells respond to the environment that we live in, not just the physical environment, but energetically what we choose to surround ourselves with. And the cells respond to our internal thoughts and also our judgments and how we view the outside world. So the mind is very powerful, our emotions are very powerful, and the body responds to how we think and feel.
Ooh, that's cool. And in 2015, I made a personal life's declaration, and that was to spend the rest of my life having as much fun as possible, hanging out with positive and uplifting people who are
Love
making a
it.
positive impact on the planet. And that's what I've been surrounding myself with. They've kind of been finding their way to me, right? Because
Hmm.
that's what I'm putting out there. Like this is it. Like I'm tired of that life that I lived for 51 years. I want a shift in my life, and this to hang out with the positive people in my life. And so just like you said, I chose a
Hmm.
declaration that would give me the result that I'm looking for. And then that choosing of that changed the vibration of how I'm
Yep.
showing up. And
Yep.
everything is shifting because of that. I mean, it's still shifting. It's always going to be shifting. And
Exactly.
so, yeah, so I love that. That's so fantastic. How did you get into the naturopathic world? Like, what was it that made you decide to get into that before you go there? Like, I remember a period of time where I was working with an iridologist, and I was like,
Hmm.
oh, I'm going to be an iridologist. And then I was working with someone else in nutrition. I'm like, oh, I'm going to, like, I was like, oh, I'm just going to be whatever I'm involved in right now. I ended up not going those paths, of course, but I'm just wondering, like, what took you down that path? And
Are you
is
an
this yours?
Aquarius?
I probably should be, but I'm Pisces. Maybe I
Okay.
was born a month late or something. But
Okay.
like, this is my soul's path to discovery. Like your soul's path is like, boom, I know what I want. I'm doing it.
Oh gosh, no. I mean,
Okay.
I took flying lessons. I used to be a chef. I was a personal trainer. I mean, I wanted to, very similar to you. I have a very exploratory personality, but I was a college athlete. I had an injury. My doctor, my orthopedist, he was like, "Why are you not healing? Like, you're young, you're vital. I've run every test on you in the book." And he was just like, "You're not healing." And so he actually was like, "Hey, super random. I took this weekend acupuncture course. Do you mind if I try it on you? Like, free of charge. Come to my office." Because he's like, I feel like there's something more than just the mechanical aspect of physical therapy or surgery. And because I guess he was noticing in his own career that some people heal great and some people don't. and he couldn't figure out what the difference was if they were getting the same treatment plan. And he did 3 acupuncture sessions on me, and I went from being in, I mean, so I was physically healed, right? Nothing looked wrong, but I was living in pain, and I refused to take pain medication, and I could not walk. I went from being a college athlete to not even being able to walk like 100 yards without just being like in utter tears and thinking like, someone just please put me in bed. And so he did 3 acupuncture sessions on me. I had 3 crazy reactions. Like the first one, I just bawled. I spent the entire hour just crying and crying and crying. I mean, I was releasing so much energy. Second session, I was like scared. I was like, please don't leave me alone in this room, which is very strange because for anyone who knows me, I'm a very brave individual. I probably put myself in situations that I shouldn't sometimes. I mean, very courageous, but I was like, please don't leave me alone in this room. And then the third one, I just laughed. I could not stop laughing. I mean, everything was funny. And then after that, I literally had no pain and I was back to my normal life after spending 4 years in physical therapy. So,
Oh,
when you talk about the mind and stuck energy and just the power of the unknown, there's a lot there. So that's what got me into natural medicine. I mean, I was so curious by that, that I was like, maybe I need to see somebody who's like an acupuncturist or a naturopathic doctor. I was actually in a graduate school program for sports physiology and nutrition. And I ended up leaving the program because I was like, this is so much more powerful and in alignment with what I was looking for my life. So did all of the
mhm.
prereqs, took all the tests, did my interviews, got accepted. And, now I'm here to serve because it's just life is limitless. There's so many possibilities.
Yeah.
And when we think that we've met our end, I just don't believe that that's true. It's just we've met the end through the lens that we're looking at it through. And so the question is, how can you expose yourself to people with a different lens so that you can look at it from a different angle and say, is there a different or a better choice for me in this moment for what I'm trying to achieve?
Sometimes I think I'm looking through the kaleidoscope lens. That's the lens I'm looking through. Hey, I'm curious. Did he continue to do acupuncture? I mean, that's a great result. Like he's like, hey, I want to test this out on you, and it
Yeah.
worked.
Yeah, no, to my understanding and awareness, he has continued to do that. I mean, he's still an orthopedist. He's in Houston, Texas.
Mm.
And this was many, many years ago, but I believe that he did continue for quite some time after that, at least. Yeah.
Okay, see, I see we have the banner in front of us that's saying, Linda, move on. Let's talk about the book a little bit. So, so we're here. I'm here interviewing one of the authors in our book, Anatomy of Abundance, and super excited about this. Anatomy of Abundance is an incredible book where we have different areas of the what's called the, I don't know how best to explain it, but it's all about the different areas of life and how they work in conjunction with each other. And so, Michelle, your chapter in that particular book is called Your Soul's Path to Discovery. I think we talked a little bit about your soul's path to discovery,
Yes.
and maybe a little bit about my soul's path to discovery. You can get your copy of this book at go.patrinawisdom.com/abundance. And why don't you share with us a little bit about your chapter without giving it all away?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it really starts on the cellular level. So you are a combination of your mom and your dad from a cellular perspective. And then you come out into this world and you have a series of experiences, and nobody's life is the same. And so I really talk about the cellular maturation of the body as your cells are trying to learn its identity and its job and what it's meant to do. You are also being bombarded and influenced by everything around you, your family, your culture, socioeconomic, background, animals, what you see on TV. I mean, the list goes on. And so I tap into the psychological development and the cellular development and thought provoking questions and ways you can identify where you're at today and maybe what led you there. Because only when you understand what led you there can you start to unwind the things that you feel like need to be shifted, both from a physical perspective, like talking about the thyroid, but also from a mental emotional perspective. So you can't create a new self from the old self. You have to be willing to make changes. And so this is getting into the intricacies of our cellular matrix, right? Talking about medicine, but also how that shows up mentally, emotionally. And every day is different for everyone. Like you will continuously be on your soul's path to discovery till the day you take your last breath. The
Hmm.
question is, who do you want to be today? Where do you want to go next? What are you willing to let go of? And you just have to align with all of that and say, I'm going to do it. Like you said, a declaration. I mean, you have a beautiful story, which I'm sure your listeners are very aware of. You have to decide, and you have to be dedicated to the dream. You can't just hope it's going to change, but keep doing the same stuff. As a kid,
Mhm.
my mom always said, do what you've always done, get what you've always got. And I was like, oh my God, hangman. Like, why do you? Yeah, exactly. I was like, thanks, mom. But I'm like, oh my gosh, like, worst, best saying ever. It's so true. You can't do the same thing and expect a different result. I think someone said that's insanity, right?
Right, right. You can't, beat your head against the wall and expect a different result
Yeah.
every time. So you can reach out to Dr. Michelle Wolford, drmichellewolford.com, and
Mhm.
please connect with her. And you do one-on-one coaching, and you're starting a group type of coaching program. I want to share a little bit about that because that's something that really interests me. I love group because it keeps me more motivated when I'm with other people. So you share a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So right now, for the last, 14 plus years, I've been doing one-on-one visits. I think that that's very powerful. And I just started to realize that the obstacle for some people was time, was money. And I have a ceiling, right? So it's just like I can only see so many people in a day. So if somebody couldn't get in for the next 3+ months, it was like, gosh, it would be really great to create something for a team. So people could, share their stories. They could have kind of like a buddy to help them along. They could realize they're not the only one going through their journey, even though all of our journeys are like intricately our own, like nuancely they're our own, there's still like some similarities. So I'm redoing my website starting this year. So we're in January, and hopefully it will be done come April. And I'm hopeful to be launching some group medicine programs between April and June of this year, 2024. I haven't fully decided where I want to start. So if you have a forum where people can write in, like, hey, let's do a thyroid one, or hey, let's do a high blood pressure. I want to be able to curtail it to why would somebody get here? What tests are really important to run? Let's do a group lab review, right? Like everybody go get your blood tested. We can do a in-depth review together, and then let's talk about treatments, like what works for 80% of people. And then the other 20% is when it becomes more specialized, right? When that comes into like, what do you, Linda, specifically need to be meditating on? What do I, Michelle, specifically need to be letting go of in my life and aligning with? But there's a lot of power in group medicine because, and I haven't seen anybody doing it. Doesn't mean anybody's not, but I'm like, God, this could be really great. You get a group of
Mm-hmm.
people experiencing a similar thing, getting like high end integrative functional medicine and learning how they can like heal their body naturally. Like, how empowering is that?
Yeah, and I love the idea because you're not going to do something generic and general, but really
Correct.
holding it into one. Of course, I'm going to vote for the hypothyroid. Okay, I mean it's just my vote, and
Yep.
because that's definitely a big issue for a lot of people. It's not
It
just
is.
women. I think it seems from my knowledge is that more women seem to have it than men. Am I correct in that assumption?
You are correct in that assumption. 1 out of 3 women are diagnosed hypothyroid. I think it's I can't remember by what age, but yes to that. And I think men is like 1 out of 7. So it is different,
And is
but
that
it's a
because,
lot.
like you mentioned earlier, is that because like a lot of women are taught to be seen and not heard, that
I
their
think,
voice
yeah,
doesn't matter, their opinion
I
doesn't
think,
matter. I don't want to hear it from you, like whatever.
yep, I think energetically, for sure, that's a huge piece. And then I think physiologically, our hormones are changing every 7 days. We see it every 28 more visually while we're menstruating, but every 7 days, our sex hormones go through a massive shift. So the thyroid has to adjust to what's happening from a hormonal perspective. Men's change every 72 days. So we as women are just constantly changing from a cellular perspective, which is a huge weight on the thyroid from a physiological perspective. And then on top of that, absolutely, I think historically speaking, women have been kind of like, okay, we don't need to hear you, or be quiet, or you're supposed to be the listener, or there is some patterning, some familial and social patterning there.
Okay. Well, as you guys can
Yeah.
hear, I think we could talk to Michelle forever. I was going to say several hours, but I think just forever. Okay, just forever. So first of all, you are here at Action Takers Publishing. I'm so honored and blessed to have you. You're working with us on the Anatomy of Abundance book. You can get your copy at actiontakerspublishing.com. Actually, I'm sorry, that's wrong. You can get your copy of Anatomy of Abundance at go.patrinawisdom.com. patreon.com/abundance. And then also go follow us. We are on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and on Facebook at Action Takers Publishing. And if you think that you would like to be involved in a group program with a naturopathic doctor on related to thyroid, I'm voting for thyroid.
Yeah,
Please
reach
out to me or Michelle. Let's talk about it because it's something she's exploring, and the best way to explore that is to find out what the interest is. So hopefully you guys will be on board with that. Michelle, final question. We went way over time because, like I said, I feel like I just talked to you forever. It was not you. It's all me because I'm curious, right? Because there was something you said about that too, the curiosity. That is definitely me. But what is one thing that you would like our readers to take away from reading this book, Anatomy of Abundance?
Yeah, gosh, what a great question. It's a simple answer, but I think it's that there's possibilities. There's always an answer. And if you want to heal, healing can happen. I have just seen the most miraculous things, and everybody's path is different. So what worked for you may not work for me, or vice versa. But there's always an answer out there. It's just about being able to align with it and surrender into it and receive it, because we don't always receive what we know that the answer is, either because of a multitude of reasons, not deserving, what will my life look like without it? And there's oftentimes a lot of unconscious tapes running behind the scenes for a lot of people, which is the benefit of doing work like this, is you really get to start to dive deeper into the sense of self. It's self-discovery. And that's why it is your soul's path to discovery. So I'm hopeful that people walk away knowing there's always an answer and there are possibilities.
Yeah, so there were several. Normally I don't have a follow-up, but I have a follow-up this one. Surprise, surprise. There was something you said. You said, and if you want to heal, you will heal. And what I love about that is because you also earlier, you mentioned truth, speaking our truth. You mentioned about choosing. And so somebody may be sitting here listening and saying, I do want to heal. So what's the underlying thing that's happening? Because you also mentioned the subconscious. The subconscious is working behind there. We don't know what it's saying and what it's thinking. And so what is happening is if I say I want to heal, but I'm not healing. So what potentially is happening there?
Oftentimes people's disease is serving them in some capacity, or there's something that they don't want to let go of, that they are afraid of letting go of. And I see this all the time. I mean, a great example actually is women who say that they want to be pregnant and be moms, but yet they don't change their work life, they don't change their social life, and they just want to like keep everything as is, and then all of a sudden be a mother. And it's like, there are things that have to change, and oftentimes people are unwilling to let go of the old sense of self, right, the old identity, or again, their imbalance, their disease, whatever it is they're not attaining in their life, it's serving them in some capacity. So people that are like, oh, I just want to like make more money, but then they feel like others are always taking care of them, and that brings them a sense of love. They're afraid of making more money because they're afraid that that sense of love is going to be taken away when all of a sudden these other people are like, well, you don't need me for my money. So there's usually some story that's playing in the background that's holding us back from really achieving what we want or say we want.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to work on, a lot of work to be had out there. So join us in our thyroid group program.
Yes.
It's happening, people. It's happening. Yeah, join us in our thyroid group program because you're going to get a lot more out of Michelle than just about the thyroid. There's going to be a lot of transformation that's going to come from that. If she does a different programming, that she does a different program, but I'm voting for the thyroid program.
Thyroid's a good one. I see so many thyroid issues and so many women have it. So yes, Hashimoto's, Graves, hyper, we can actually interweave it together.
Okay, awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
So go connect with Dr. Michelle at drmichellewolford.com. Get your copy of the book, Anatomy of Abundance, at go.patrinawisdom.com/abundance. Thanks, Michelle, so much for being here. And like, oh my gosh, I'm looking at that time. I said, dang, okay. I knew I just could not keep it to 15 minutes when we got started. But it's been a pleasure having you. And I'm going to drive up to Encinitas right now. I don't know where your office is, but I'm just going to drive up there and I'm going to yell out the window, Michelle, I'm ready.
Where are you? So fun.
Thanks so much for being here. Truly appreciate you.
Thank you. Yes, you too.
Okay.
One of the things that I've personally found from my experience of working with Action Takers Publishing is that I've walked away with more friends than I had before because of the relationship that you build with the authors while working in an anthology. I think it's an amazing project to be able to get published. It's a fantastic way to get published the first time, and I've almost seen people who get hooked on doing anthologies because once that bug is bitten, you feel like you can release more and more and more and more stories, and Linda's got a bunch of titles that I think resonates with a lot of us who live in the real world.